another session of Gallant Current Affairs CaN. So today we will be actually discussing about the current affairs of the 3 days, October 17, 18 and 19th. So moving on, I have with me about 9 topics today. First we will be dealing about the Indian Himalayan region needs its own EIA. So we will be dealing about this environment impact assessment based upon the Himalayan region. Then we have the palliative care, how the non-communicable diseases are actually increasing and why there is actually need for India to focus on the palliative care. Then medical termination of pregnancy. Recently there has been a lot of cases that has been hearing regarding the termination of a pregnancy of a 26 week month pregnant lady. So we will be looking at that medical termination of pregnancy, that act, and what is the outcome of the case. Then regarding the same-sex marriages, of how that was actually not legalized. So we will be looking into that as well. Then synergistic barriers affecting our sustainable development goals. Centralized procurement of drugs and other resources by the central government. Then the Wildlife Protection Act, how the amendments that has been actually made in the Wildlife Protection Act. Like we know there were 6 schedules within this Wildlife Protection Act, which was actually reduced to 4 schedules, and we will know what are the major drawbacks regarding it. Then the explosion of digital uncertainty and Belt and Road Initiative of China, which was actually introduced in 2013, and recently there is actually a summit happening on BRI. So we will be looking into all these topics. First we have the Indian Himalayan region needs its own EIA. As you know, EIA is Environmental Impact Assessment. The context here which is actually taken is the Teesta Dam breach in Sikkim. You know all these glaciers from the Longtak Lake which actually damaged the Teesta 3 dam, Changtang Dam in Sikkim. The whole dam is actually destroyed by the overflow of water of the disaster, the glacier lake outburst which actually happened in Sikkim. So based upon this, there is no EIA process presently in the Himalayan region, because of which all this major construction work which has been actually taken in this Himalayan region are not basically analyzed for this environmental impact. So that is what this article has been actually portraying about. First you need to know what is the environmental impact assessment. We will actually look that in a brief. So the basis of EIA process is defined by the UNEP, that is the United Nations Environment Programme defines the EIA process as a tool to identify the environmental, social and economic impacts of a project before it is actually implemented. It will actually look in not just into the environmental aspect, it would be disastrous or is it a perfect place to construct that particular project. No, that is not the only angle EIA is dealing about. It also looks upon the social and economic impacts, how much money it takes, would this much fund is required for this particular project, or should we cut the cost, that is also looked into. Another aspect is the people who live there, what is the impact of this project on the people, will they be displaced. So what all this will be actually looked into the process of EIA. The tool compares various alternatives for the proposed project, like various proposed project, how it should be constructed, what all methodology should take place. So various amount of processes will be actually considered, and it actually predicts and analyzes all possible environmental repercussions that can actually happen when this project is actually constructed. What all environmental damages can take place, what all future phenomena, like even if it's earthquake or even if it's landslide or anything, will be actually predicted by this model. The EIA also help decide appropriate mitigation strategies, successfully how we can actually mitigate any of this like environmental problems in the future also is also told by EIA. So that is the goods with environmental impact assessment. It actually gives us a lot of idea regarding the environment and what the project will actually do the particular environment, social as well as the economic angle. Now EIA is actually not introduced by India, it was actually introduced in US and other western country states. Then it actually came in India in actually 1994 only. Under this, it was actually created under this Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Since then this EC, that is the environmental clearance, was actually made mandatory for the expansion of modern projects. The environmental clearance was actually made more compulsory. Now in 2006 this was also extended, like recently, like in 1994 notification only the central government can do this EIA process. In the 2006 notification it was revised, and even the state government were actually given the rights to clear some of the project that comes under the state. Then in 2020 there came a bigger draft, but there was a lot of controversy associating with the 2020 draft, which actually gave a lot of rights to the industrialists than this environmentalists. So a lot of tussle has been actually going place based upon the 2020 EIA notification draft. So in the EIA there are certain processes that are happening. The first stage is the screening and scoping. They actually look into this, the place, if it is actually suitable for the particular project, and what all is actually required for the particular project. Everything is actually analyzed by the screening and scoping. Then it is the assessment of environmental risk. What all environmental risk can take place at that particular place is also assessed in this EIA. Then the mitigation strategies are also told by the people, what measures will be actually followed to minimize this environmental risk in that particular place. Then decision making, a regulatory agency will make the final decision of what the outcome will be. Then there will be actually constant monitoring even after the project is completed for any kind of environmental risk or impact as such. So as I have told you, this environmental impact assessment EIA presently in India is restricted to only certain sectors like mining, extraction of natural resources, power generation, physical infrastructure as such. But the Himalayan region, it doesn't come under the EIA process. So because of which we can see a lot of disasters that has been actually happening in the Himalayan region. You can take Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Assam, all these areas which lies near the belt of Himalayan region and where there are a lot of infrastructure developments happening. So these places are more susceptible to any kind of environmental risk, political risk as well as the social risk as such. So it's very important that the Himalayan region also come under the ambit of the EIA process. Now, even if there is a lot of notifications or a lot of concerns about the EIA and such, majority people who are doing EIA follows a box tick approach manner. It's like it's more of a correct pattern also we can say. They are just simply accepting the proposal of the project without properly doing any kind of environmental impact assessment as such. That is what is called the box tick approach. There is no central regulator but a mere formality. They are actually checking everything and then approving the project, because of which we can see a lot of disasters that are actually taking place. So it's very important that the EIA process becomes much more stricter so that we can actually we can avoid a lot of these kind of environmental disasters as such. So as per the notification of 2006, it was actually divided into two categories. The category A, which looks up at the national level of appreciation, then category B, state level of appreciation, where they actually look into state kind of any projects in the states, and state level experts actually come into it. Also the 4 stages of EIA cycle, screening, scoping, public hearing and appraisal was actually added in this 2006 notification. The category A projects require mandatory environmental clearance and thus they do not have to undergo the screening process. There are mandatory clearance required for the category A. For category B, they undergoes a screening process and are further classified into mandatory required, that is B1, and not required, that is actually B2. So 2 kind of categories are actually made in the day. For category A, the clearance is actually mandatory. So there is no screening, you are directly going into clearance stage. For the category B project, they first do screening and then they testify if there is actually need of particular clearance. If there is a need of clearance, they are actually channeled to B1. B1 stating they have mandatory clearance, and if they don't need mandatory clearance, they are actually channeled back to B2. So that is the category B project. The projects with the mandatory clearance, projects such as mining, thermal power plants, river valleys, infrastructure, highway, ports, harbour, airport and industries, all are actually coming under this mandatory field of clearance. So that is about this 2006 notification was actually saying about. So if you are looking what are the major provisions, that is actually given by 2020 draft. As I told, there was a lot of controversy that was happening within this 2020 draft. The thing is that there was public hearing in the particular place where the project was supposed to be connected. There will be public hearing that will be actually taking place. So initially the number of days for public hearing was actually 30. Now it was actually 30 days initially. Now that was actually reduced to about 20 days. Also the public answer hearing is proposed to be reduced to a maximum of 40 days. It won't exceed any 40 days, and the public submit their response is actually reduced to 20 days from before it was actually 30 days. The thing is that the ministry what is saying that like with the development of the digital and technology, it will be easy for people to actually get the news and respond back. But the thing is that certain projects take place in some tribal areas, so which is actually located away from towers and such, where there is no internet connectivity and such. For such people, such category of habitational people, getting this information is also very tough. It takes more than 20 or 30 days to even reach this kind of information into their ears. So, the activists are also saying against this. More discretionary powers that is actually given to the central government, and they can actually declare economically sensitive areas without a public hearing or environmental clearance. They are more like even the government can actually redistribute this land for any industrial purpose as such. So, there is a lot of controversy regarding this 2020 draft. Government also get to decide which projects are actually called as strategic. As we know, like near this international border area within the 100 km, any kind of projects can actually take place without any clearance, because they are actually considered as strategic. So, such kind of project will not need any clearance if they are actually taglined as strategic. Then post facto clearance. Legalization of projects that have commenced operation without obtaining necessary clearances subject to payment of penalty. So, all these are actually some of the issues that are actually pertinent in this 2020 draft. So, that was we were dealing with this EIA notification and such, why there is a requirement of EIA in the Himalayan area, and why certain kind of development should be made in this environmental impact assessment as such. Then palliative care. There is communicable disease and there is a non-communicable disease. So, people are always afraid of this communicable disease because it gets spread so fast. If you are looking at COVID, people were so worried about getting COVID rather than like people don't fear for the non-communicable disease. It may be hypertension, maybe cancer, like this. Such kind of panic would not be actually felt in the case of non-communicable diseases. So, because of which this non-communicable diseases area get neglected so badly, because of which people neglect it, and this has been increasing for a lot of things. If you are looking at the statistics, there is an increased medical expenditure, especially in the case of this non-communicable disease. Even if it's cancer, brain tumor, even it's kind of hypertension or any kidney issues, everything is actually medically much more expensive. Nearly 5.5 crore people fall below the poverty line just because they have to pay this kind of medical expenditures. People are actually not able to, even if like a person, there is a case study that is actually given in the newspaper that a particular person, he earns only 1,600 rupees as pension for his medical expense. His journey to the hospital itself takes 1,200 rupees, because of which he is actually not able to get the required kind of medical facilities that he should be actually getting. Because of which we can tell that all this medical expenditure just for this non-communicable type of diseases. Non-communicable diseases is actually heavy and it's actually very high, because of which all this money for medical expenditure come out of the pocket of these people, and because of which they actually go below the poverty line. So, that is what is called nearly 5.5 crore people fall below the poverty line every year due to out-of-pocket expenditure on medicines. Now, India, as we know, is actually becoming an epicenter in the case of non-communicable diseases. 2 months ago, we actually read an article of the Apollo Hospital, an article written by the director of Apollo Hospital, stating how the non-communicable diseases are increasing in India and how India is actually neglected towards its NCDs, and how this can actually increase the expenditure to $4 trillion in the coming future if this NDC field is actually neglected. So, we actually saw that kind of article as well. India becoming an epicenter for non-communicable diseases is pushed more poor people into poverty, and this has actually created financial toxicity, which means that they don't have enough money to get any kind of medications, because of which people avoid going to the hospital and they actually go untreated and they die eventually. So, these kind of problems also happen because there is financial toxicity. For each and everything you have a lot of expenditure, and this expenditure is not borne by the government, but it actually comes out of the pocket. Only 1.35% of the GDP is actually spent by the government on health services, and because of which only 1.35, we have a 1.4 billion people in India, and each people have certain kind of medical problem, even some have rare diseases as such. So, because of which only this 1.35% of GDP allocation for this medical field is actually not enough, because of which the people have to actually increase their out of pocket expenditure. So we need to know what palliative care is. The palliative care is a kind of medical field where like you are actually improving the mental stability, the physical stability of the person. It actually helps them improve the quality of their life. The thing is that if a person is happy, there is a lot of changes you can actually make in the person's body. There is actually a difference in the body of a person who is actually happy and is actually mentally depressed because of the disease that person is having. The thing is that if you are actually able to keep the person happy, there is a chance that the person cures well and there is a reduction in the expenditure close to about 25%. Palliative care is such which can actually help the person come out of this kind of depression. It actually helps the person cope up with their life and give them more meaning to their life. It actually helps them focusing in the improving the quality of their life and prevent suffering among these kind of life limiting illness and diseases. So that is why there is actually palliative care. The thing is that it considers the physical, social and economic realities of the patient and the family. And as I have told you, if the palliative care in the patient is given, it has shown that it actually reduces the health expenditure by about 25%. So that is what is called palliative care. And India, what is happening? In India, the thing is that the palliative care is actually not given big importance. Even there is no insurance or any kind of budget allocation from the part of the government, especially for palliative care. And the palliative care, if as per Indians, is actually restricted to cancer alone. The thing is that close to about 20 diseases require palliative care, but out of this 20, only cancer is actually recognized as an important disease for which palliative care is actually required. That is also another important disadvantage as regarding India. In India, palliative care is not covered under the budget of the government, not insurance, not even this Aishwarya Bharat program that has been rolled out by the government. It actually also does not focus upon children who are actually suffering from chronic diseases as well. The palliative care, as I have told you, is not a wealth generating sector. It actually reduces the expenditure. So because of which even the private sector will not actually will neglect this kind of palliative care, because of which if they actually provide this palliative care, the expenditure of out-of-pocket expenditure from the part of the people will actually reduce. Now this is equal to resulting of loss of profit for the private sector hospitals, because of which they don't actually promote this kind of palliative care as well. So, skewed availability. As per the IFCCI report, it is accessible to, the palliative care is only accessible to about 1 to 2% of people out of the 70 million people that are actually there. The thing is that the palliative care, as I have told you, is largely neglected in a part like India. Even the health workers lack awareness in the case of palliative sector. Thus, there is a need for palliative care as per the NP, that's the National Program for Non-Communicable Diseases. When it was actually revised, it stated that the palliative care will be restricted to cancer alone. As I have told you, palliative cancer alone, there are actually more than cancer, like close to 20 other diseases which actually require palliative care. So what is the way forward? We have to revise this national palliative program for palliative. We need to increase the budget, we need to give insurance, we need to add this kind of palliative care into the medical system. We need to improve the awareness, especially among the health workers, to generate this palliative care. Even the government budget should be actually focusing about the palliative care, because the thing is that it can reduce the government budget from overall. Because if you are actually giving the palliative care to people, the overall budget or overall expenditure will actually reduce by certain, like close to 25%. So it's important that this palliative care is not something new. It has been there for over 4 decades. But the thing is that this is a largely neglected field. That is why there is a need to pump up this area. It actually provisions for the public health care would actually help the government not only in saving money but also in protecting the people. As per the 67th World Health Assembly that was held in 2014, it called for a palliative care to be integrated into the health system at all levels. So as per the World Health Assembly, it was actually said that the palliative care should be actually implemented in all hospitals, in all health sectors, so that we can actually save money as well as save people as such. So that is a small article regarding palliative care. Moving on, we have medical termination of pregnancy. So as per the context, as I have told you, 26-week a week pregnant woman approached the court to actually terminate her pregnancy because she is actually not able to carry forward with her child. So initially the Supreme Court bench stated that if you are actually physically not feeling well, it is that you can actually terminate the pregnancy. But the termination of pregnancy actually happens with the help of they have to actually consult the doctors and examine it before actually terminating the pregnancy. But it was actually found that the baby has heartbeats and it's a healthy baby. If it's born, it will be a healthy baby. The thing is that even if the mother is actually undergoing a kind of depression or postpartum depression, whatever tablet she is even having is not actually affecting the baby at all. The baby is healthy. So if the court actually gives a verdict of helping this woman, which means that the court is actually ordering a doctor to stop the life of a baby, terminate the life of a baby. So because of it, the Supreme Court revoked it and stated that if you are actually willing to take the baby the full long term, they will even put the baby up for adoption. So that is what is called, and this termination of pregnancy was actually not allowed by the Supreme Court. So as per the section 5 of the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, it prescribed medical termination if the pregnancy was immediately necessary to save the life of the pregnant woman. Like you can only terminate the pregnancy if the woman who is actually carrying the child, her life is actually under threat. Now in this case, she has 2 children already, and after the birth of a second child, she has postpartum depression. Now that is not a life-threatening disease as per the Supreme Court or the doctors, which means that the woman's life is not under threat, because of which this woman, like as per section 5 of MTP, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, this kind of termination of pregnancy will not be actually allowed. And Article 21 also doesn't hold account here. It actually talks about the right to life and liberty, but still when you are actually looking at the life of a baby also here, the thing is that the termination of pregnancy will not be allowed even under Article 21. The use of life in this concept talks about the life and death kind of circumstances, but as per the woman, it is actually not a kind of life-threatening disease for the woman. So because of which this pregnancy will not be actually terminated. Also there are questions why she has actually waited for 26 weeks. Now because we know that as per the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, we have condition that up to 20 weeks you can actually terminate pregnancy, and in certain cases it actually can go in the case of 24 weeks. Till 24 weeks, till 20 weeks, and maximum to 24 weeks you can actually terminate pregnancy. But this lady actually waited for about 26 weeks, because of which they were actually not able to terminate it. Now there is the first act, the Medical Termination Protection Act was actually given, first came in 1971, then it actually came in 2021. The indication that as per 1971 only the married woman could actually undergo pregnancy termination, and now unmarried woman can also undergo termination of pregnancy. Gestational age limit 20 weeks, here also 24 weeks for rape survivors, beyond 24 weeks for substantial fetal abnormalities. If there is any kind of fetal abnormalities, or if it is life threatening for the woman, then only after 24 weeks the termination of pregnancy will be allowed. For 24 weeks, still for rape survivors also it is given. Medical or practitioners, it was for 12 weeks, and for 2 medical representatives it is actually 20 weeks. This was also extended as such. Now breach of woman's if that confidentiality of the woman was breached, the fine was 1000 rupees. Now here it is actually imprisonment or fine, imprisoned for 1 year, or it was fine. So that is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. There are actually pros and cons of this medical termination as such. Now it is hampering the life of the baby, it is actually a loss of a culture as such, but there is actually, the thing is that there is termination of pregnancy is also close to, like, we can control the population. It also looks upon the mental health of the person as such. The thing is that even also look into the financial capability to take care of their child as such. So there is a lot of angle regarding this as well. Moving on, we have same-sex marriages. So in this also the case court state that it was actually 5 bench judges. The outcome case as 3-2. The majority actually won. The thing is that the same sex cannot be actually legalized. That is what has been actually told, a court order that has been actually given out. So we will be looking into the majority view and the minority view as such. The Supreme Court stated the majority view, they cannot actually legalize the same sex marriages. And they also stated that the center or the state could actually give out some kind of legislations or laws or act that would actually legalize this kind of same-sex marriages, and this is actually not within the court purview to give out such. In the recent years, we have actually looked at a lot of judicial activism and judicial overreach. They could have actually taken this, but they stated that this is not their area. It should be actually covered under the legislation, and the center should actually put up some committee to actually look into certain kind of discrimination that is actually faced by this queer or LGBTQ committee, and appropriate legislation should be actually made in support of their favor. There is actually no fundamental right to marry. They also give a lot of demand that under the Special Marriage Act of 1954, this same-sex marriages should be also added. They should be actually given the status of civil union, and marriage is actually a fundamental right. So the court here said that the marriage is not a fundamental right, it is actually a statutory right, and also the same-sex marriages like this was also given out by the judiciary. So that is what is actually stated, that the same-sex marriages cannot be legalized by the court as such. It obliged the state to give the queer couples the legal status of civil union or marriage. Civil union is basically like a married couple where you get all the benefits of the marriage couples, like you can share the same bank account, or you have the rights of property, you can adopt a child and such. You get the rights of that of a civil union, but this was also not given by the court, stating that all this actually comes under the field of legislature. So under this minority view, our Chief Justice of India was also present, our D.Y. Chandrachud, our Chief Justice of India was also present within the minority group. The thing is that even if he is the Chief Justice of India, he doesn't have a veto. So because of which his minority view, even if he was the Chief Justice of India, was actually not taken, and the majority 3 bench actually won. He stated that the right to enter into a union cannot be restricted just based upon the sexual orientation. Now that is a discrimination based upon sexual orientation, and it violates Article 15. That is what is actually said by the minority bench, which includes D.Y. Chandrachud. The majority view held that this is actually for the legislature and not the court to actually formally recognize and grant legal status for the same-sex marriages. And the court cannot also give any kind of formal recognition to the same-sex marriage people under any kind of civil union. That is also what is actually stated by the majority bench here also. But in general, both the 5 judges accepted that this LGBTQ and queer people are discriminated in a lot of areas. They are actually doesn't have same property rights, so they cannot adopt a child, they cannot even hold the same kind of joint family accounts and such. Thus, there are a lot of discrimination that is actually faced against these kind of people. So all the discrimination should be actually checked down, and a committee should be actually given out by a union cabinet minister to actually check or find how much the people are actually discriminated, and certain kind of law and act should be actually made to support them. So that is what is actually told, and also accepted that the Special Marriage Act was not unconstitutional for excluding same-sex marriages. This was actually created in 1954, where the same-sex marriage, the concept was actually not developing. So because of which we cannot actually call that the same-sex marriage as a Special Marriage Act is actually unconstitutional. So that was also was considered by all the five judges within that bench. So that was what happened within the same-sex marriage concept. Moving on, we have synergistic barriers affecting SDGs. So recently we had a summit in New York, that is the world leaders at the SDG summit in New York, where they stated that they will actually do much more work to eradicate poverty and hunger, and also they actually recognize that the SDGs, none of the countries are in track to actually achieve the SDGs goals. We have achieved only about 15% of the 169 targets that are within the 17 goals. We have achieved only, we are on track to meet only 15%. We are not even close to achieve 50%. Now it's already 2023. We had to achieve this SDG goals by 2030. So in 2023 we have achieved, we are going to meet only 15%. So that is what the leaders has been actually discussing in the summit. They also stated that as per the United Nations CTAD report, it also estimated that the investment gap in the SDGs in the developing countries are greater than 4%. Out of this, only nearly 2 trillion needs to be directly towards the energy transition alone. They need $4 trillion. Out of this, $2 trillion is actually needed for the energy sector itself. Now these kind of donations or investments are actually not going or pooling into the developing countries. That is actually altogether another problem as well. So as you can see here, the lack of synergy between different departments and the government agencies is actually showcased in this particular. The thing is that there is different departments in India. If you are looking at the Indian, there is different departments, there are different government ministries and committees there. Everybody, each committee has different targets to achieve, and there is no synergy or connection that is happening between each of these departments or government. Because of which the SDG goals, even if they want to achieve this policy, actually not properly implemented, and there is actually lagging behind it too. So the author actually finds about 5 different types of synergies that can be actually seen. The first one thing is related to resource allocation. Each country is different on based upon resource allocation. Some countries have solar power where they can actually generate much more capability to achieve solar power. Some other countries has much more power in wind energy rather than solar power. If you are looking at the western nation countries, they have more access to wind energy rather than solar energy. If you are looking in India, we are being a tropical country, we have more access to solar wind kind of rather than this wind energy and such. So the resource allocation is different from different regions. Then creation of enabling environment, that is also posed an other problem, because this environmental, whatever the problems they have, is actually different across different regions. Then co-benefits, co-effectiveness and saturation levels, all these are some kind of synergies that are actually creating a lot of problem within these sectors, and because of which the countries are not actually having any kind of synergy, and because of which we cannot actually achieve our SDG goals. Even the UN expert group report titled Synergies Solution for a World in Crisis. If the synergy is not achieved, the world is in crisis, because to actually have a kind of solution for the world problem, synergy between different governments and between nations is actually required. Another problem pointed out is the ambitious renewable energy target themselves is a kind of barrier. The thing is that all these renewable energy barriers is given in this gigawatts is a lot, means if you are actually looking at an investor, you will be looking into much more bigger, like you don't want someone to buy your product within 10,000 or 20,000. You want, if you have crores of rupees, you want someone who purchases crores of rupees. The thing happens similarly here. They are actually looking into gigawatt kind of poverty. But if you are looking into medical sectors alone, they just need some few kilowatts of energy and such. They don't need this gigawatts kind of energy. So because of it, there is actually synergy that is happening between these kind of departments as such. Then, thus to simply recognize the interlink, the thing is that synergy is very simple link, but if you actually recognize the synergy links and we work on it, which means that we can actually achieve this SDG goals as such. So if you are looking, this is the chart of SDGs that has been showing. If you can see this green, it actually shows the target which we are on track to achieve, but this yellow and the red and the blue are not the targets which we are actually going to. Out of all the 17, we are just on track to achieve this no hunger goal as well as responsive consumption and production. We are not on track to achieve, you can see this green arrow over here. We are not on track to achieve any of the others or such. Like in yellow and all, there is a significant challenge that is actually remaining. For blue, for orange and such, there are significant challenges that are still remaining. Also for red, there are major challenges we still have. So this is the status of the SDG. There are 17 SDG. You need to by heart the 17 SDGs, and you should also know which are on target. There are which are still have challenges we need to achieve. So all this issue you need to know. Moving on, we have the centralized procurement. So first I will be telling you a small story about, like, we can actually take about McDonald's. That is one of the examples that is actually mentioned in the article. The thing is that there is a lot of McDonald's unit that is actually happening within. Then there is a local vendor like me where there are actually small units all over India. The thing is that McDonald's is centrally procure all the goods. If you are like for French fries, you are procuring potato. What the McDonald's do? They centrally procure this potato and then redistribute it among their local setups. Then there is a vendor like me. I am actually asking my local vendors to actually purchase their goods on their own. So because of which the price and quality varies. When McDonald's is actually centrally procuring thing, the price and the quantity of the goods, suppose the potatoes, will be actually seen. But when the vendor is locally procuring, like each procures their own, the price and the quantity of the goods actually differ. Because of which you can actually see that when you are actually purchasing differently and tallying everything together, this price is actually will be actually pretty much big, will be greater than when you are actually centrally procuring it. So that is actually what is told in the article. When you are centrally procuring it, we will actually get the best quality as well as much more the cheaper goods. But even like we are actually procuring it from different areas, different units procured separately, the price as well as the quantity of the goods varies severely. So the potatoes on the McDonald's is not the important state that what is actually stated in the article. The thing is that the authors suggested we can actually do the same kind of central procurement in the case of drug as well. That is what is actually stated by the author. If you are centrally procuring the drug centralized, will be much more cheaper and will actually ensure that all the resource and medical facilities are actually reaching the hospitals as such. So that is what this author has been actually saying about. This actually pooled buyer model for the drug procurement addresses many issues that are related to the price, efficiency, stock costs and as well as the quality concerns. So the central government actually choose to ignore the merits of pooled procurement when it comes to schemes such as our central government health scheme, Pradhana Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, employee state insurance scheme. The central government actually knows about this centralized pool, but in certain cases for important schemes that has been rolled out by the government, this centralized procurement is actually not effectively utilized. So if you are looking as a recent paper, a national cancer grid pool procurement initiative in India was actually given out. Even it stated that a centralized procurement is actually required if you need to enhance the full efficiency of that resources. Now group negotiation, uniform contracts and finally purchase by the hospital. If you are looking at the thing is that if you are actually purchasing everything together, the cancer example, it was actually done by the cancer grid for 48 drugs. It resulted in the saving about 13.2 billion rupees. When you are actually centrally procuring it, there is a lot of benefit because you get the quality resource and you get that thing for many cheaper price. Because of it, the central cancer grid was actually able to save about 13.2 billion rupees. Without pool procurement, the cost would have been 15.6 billion, with saving ranging between 23% to 99%. So that is the difference between the price and quality. The central government does know about this kind of centralized like pooled out buyer. It has actually done in the case of National AIDS Organization when they actually procured a lot of male contraceptives. The thing is that even the HLL Life Care, it's a public sector unit with the highest manufacturing capabilities in India, they also provide a benchmark price. The thing is that even the central government, when they want to procure it from the private sector, these kind of HLL Life Care actually can give a benchmark price. If it actually gives that, the private sector actually gives that it is 1,500 for creating one drug, but this HLL states that it is actually only 750 for creating the price drug. Then they will actually compare if this private company can actually give the government the thing for 750 rupees. So that is how the central procurement kind of actually works. So we knew that when you are actually buying everything in bulk, the price will be actually reduced by such. So finally, in addition to cost saving, the buyers can also, the thing is that if you are actually taking the example of OPEC, OPEC groups, they are actually the group of countries which actually sells oil. So all these countries are actually coming together because they are all selling oil in different rupees and different prices. So when they are selling like that, there is different competition, some are gaining, some are losing. So all these actually came together where they actually fix a particular amount on the price. So what are they saying? They actually pick the price amount because like for petroleum and oil, it is actually in need in every country. So they decided that they will actually increase the price and sell it for profit so that all the countries actually get the profit. It actually works both ways as well. It might benefit the buyer and it actually benefits the buyer and the seller as well. So OPEC as a seller, they benefits. For some of the drug countries and drug cartels, drug selling cartels as such, if you are procuring everything in large quantity, we might also get, the consumer might get the benefit of getting the goods cheaper as such. Finally, in addition to cost saving, the buyers clubs can also ensure better quality by having the supply test independently rather than having to rely on drug regulator to ensure the quality. You can actually ensure that as well. then centralized procurement or the pool procurement, simply it is also a powerful idea, because of which you can actually save a lot, you can actually also get the superior kind of quality as such, and also ensure the availability of life saving drug in this country in every sector as well. Now this idea has theoretical backing and it has actually empirical validation as such. Moving on, we have the Wildlife Protection Act. The thing is that recently in 2022 the amendment was actually made to this Wildlife Protection Act. There was 6 schedules that was actually created to 4 schedules. So what happened here is that a lot of new animals was actually added to the Schedule 1. Now you see, Schedule 1 holds the highest kind of protection, that these animals cannot be threatened. If you are actually threatening that kind of animal, harming or killing that animal, the punishment level is actually much more higher. So these kind of Schedule 1 animals are given highest level of protection. There is trade restriction, there is a lot of restriction regarding the Schedule 1 kind of species. But the thing is that a lot of animals was actually added or crammed into this Schedule 1. So because of which, if there is actually only 10 animals in this Schedule 1, we will actually give a lot of protection to this animal. But the thing is that with the change in the policy section, a lot of animals, close to 600 species of vertebrates, hundreds of invertebrates, and also Schedule 2 consists about 2000 species. So lot of these species and animals actually are crammed into the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, because of which even if they are actually given the highest schedule, now they have to actually distribute the allocation of fund for protection of all these animals. So all these are crammed, so not all animals get the equal protection now. For just a rat, snake, and for the tigers, the equal level of Schedule 1 is actually given. So for which actually should we give the highest level of protection. So everything actually goes into a kind of chaos. The Wildlife Protection Act originally intended to regulate the use of various species to restrict their trading and also police the trafficking of species. The original act doesn't consist of the recommendations of CITES, but this new act is one step further and it actually aligns its goal with CITES. CITES is it actually restricts the trading of these endangered species. So that is what CITES does. This Wildlife Protection Act of 2002 amendment that was actually made includes the provisions of CITES as well. The thing is that there is unclear resources, so we don't know, because there is like earlier there was only a few species, now there are a lot of species, because of which we don't know how the resource allocation actually take place and what kind of bigger protection we should actually give to the animals as such. The same level of protection is actually given to tigers, jackals, as well as the king cobra, rat, snakes, Indian buzzard. Every of these important species and not important species are actually given the same kind of protection in Schedule 1. Also, like the thing is that when you are actually cramming a lot, it becomes a lot of tough for the conservation. Now for example, the Tree Preservation Act of Kerala and Karnataka, which holds that the native trees should not be felled and they should be actually protected. So this was actually affecting the livelihood of the people, because they used to actually fell this native tree for the creation of the house and such. So what they did, they actually brought in the foreign variety of the trees which could be actually easily cut. Now it became an invasive species and became a threat for their environment as well. So certain kind of harm also affects the people as such. Now listing has been actually present of spotted deer. Now spotted deer is a kind of threatening species. Like we feel like it's not threatening, but it damages the ecosystem as well as the vegetation and such. Now the spotted deer is actually put up on the Schedule 1. Now there is no vermin, like earlier Schedule 5 was actually vermin. If the particular number of species increases, like for example rat or snakes or pigs, if the species actually increases beyond a number, we can actually do culling or we can actually kill that vermin if it's actually damaging the ecosystem, damaging the vegetation as such. But because certain species is actually in the Schedule 1, we cannot touch the species. Especially we can see the spotted deer. There is a larger number, it actually damages the vegetation. Even if its population grew more, we cannot actually kill that species or actually replace the species as such. That is actually protected. Also the pigs, in certain like Schedule 1 the species, the wild pig was also added. The wild pig, even because of the spreading of diseases and such, culling was actually practiced in some states. Now that is also banned because wild pigs are added in the Schedule 1. There is no vermin kind of species that is actually mentioned in this new amended act. New act elevates wild pig to and algae to Schedule 1. restrictive use on hunting and the use of animals. The thing is that hunting was restricted when the population of the species was actually reducing. But like for elephants, certain kind of animals like elephants are actually used also for the purpose like when there is festivals and celebration and temples as such. So a lot of restrictions has been actually made into the hunting and as well as the use of animals for these kind of purpose as well. The thing is that when all these kind of animals, dangerous animals like crocodiles and such is actually given the status of Schedule 1, it affects the life of the people a lot. We can see the man-animal conflict a lot, because of which the life of the man is also comes under danger, because these animals are loose prey. So also this actually affects a lot of people. It also affects the animal because there is a skewed kind of allocation of resources that is actually given out because of it. So all these are actually mentioned by the author in this article. Moving on, we have the explosion of the digital uncertainty. The increased laying, and the thing is that we have been using the digital for like digital technology for a lot of time. The digital technology, the use of mobile phones, everything, the IT, artificial intelligence, machine learning has been actually is going on. The development in the field is actually going on a lot, and a lot of people are actually using it. Because the thing is that we are using the mobile phone, you are using the laptops, we are using this kind of technology, but we don't know how the coding kind of works. What is the background of all this? We don't know that kind of systems and such. So because of it actually affects the awareness of the people. For example, if I am taking myself itself, I know how to use all this stuff, but I don't know the backing or the background running of all these resources as such. Now that affects the system a lot. With more data ups and available, there is a vulnerability is actually also increases. Now all this actually develops to the cognitive warfare. The thing is that if you are taking this Russia-Ukraine war and such, we all thought that the Ukraine would be actually, the war between this will be actually lost within 10 days. But now the war has been actually dragging on for 2 years. Then similarly, it's very tedious work to actually carry on a kind of war. At that time, we can actually work with this cognitive warfare kind of technologies will be actually much more helpful than we actually think it is. The thing is that the cognitive warfare is a kind of, we are changing our mental ability as such. By the changing of the mental ability, what we are saying is that like we are actually spreading the kind of fake news. Suppose Pakistan is supporting the fake news of what India has done, because of which the Indian people react to it in a certain way. It actually affects the mental thinking or what we understand. Like a lot of fake news can be actually spread because of this cognitive warfare kind of such. They can actually input these kind of fake news and the AI generate this, and these kind of fake news is actually spread all over, because of which the thinking or the mental capacity or whatever the person was actually thinking, this cognitive actually changes. It actually changes our consciousness as well as our emotional support as well. It affects our human decision making discussion as such. As I have told you, the cognitive warfare, it actually spreads a lot of fake messages and misinformation, because of which it actually leads to a kind of, we might know what is actually fake news. It actually leads to a condition of truth decay, which means that we know certain news are actually not correct, some are fake. So we will actually develop the thing is that there will be actually doubt within our mind if the information getting to us is actually true or not true. So there will be actually a kind of truth decay where we actually feel that we cannot trust a particular kind of news. Importantly, in that scenario, which we need to know is the artificial general intelligence as such. The artificial intelligence search thing is that it actually can work like a human, it can actually find solution as such. So the thing is that without even the help of humans, they can actually find solutions of their own. It is a representation of the generalized human cognitive abilities in software, so that when they are actually faced with the humans, they can actually perform the similar kind of task that is actually performed by the humans as such. This kind of AGI, artificial general intelligence, it is actually important for your prelims as such. This artificial general intelligence is a kind of artificial intelligence that is actually equal or superior to that kind of a human intelligence, which means they can actually even find solution which humans cannot actually find. They have superior ability than humans, which actually penetrate whole new sectors and replace the human judgment. Now, if these kinds of solutions are actually developing, it can replace humans altogether. It replaces human judgment, and all these machines and AI will be actually taking over. This intention of the artificial general intelligence system is to perform any task that humans can perform, that is actually capable of. It has an inherent capacity to even actually flood a country with fake content as such, and masculine and actually delay the truth, and for imitating known voices with the false ones. Like there is a lot of fake kind of deep kind of technology that even takes, that can be actually developed in the case of AGI. This system have potential to be able to make decisions that are unpredictable and uncountable, which means that they actually take decisions on their own without looking into the human emotions or human intelligence. So that is the ability of this artificial general intelligence. So that is regarding this digital uncertainty news. Moving on to our last topic, we have the Belt and Road Initiative. As I have told you, this Belt and Road Initiative summit is happening place in China. So regarding this, we will be looking into the back history of Belt and Road Initiative. Now currently it is actually a 4 trillion investment. There is a 4 trillion investment that is actually required in this Belt and Road Initiative. It connects via the road, rail, sea routes and support infrastructure and operating system all over the globe. See, as you can see, this Belt and Road Initiative actually connects the Asia to Europe and also connects some of the African countries. This is the overland route as well as the maritime route that are actually developed between the BRI. India is not part of the BRI. If you see India on this map, India is actually not a part of BRI as such. So if you are looking, there is a lot of objective. The thing is that after 1970s, they have been doing a lot of infrastructure projects, so that they have been actually developing the Chinese economy as such. So the thing is that the Chinese economy actually went from a regional power in this global influence to completely becoming a global power with a comprehensive strength. So that has been the development of China especially. The thing is they have done a lot of initiative because of which they can actually emerge as one of the global and regional powers within that sphere. They also did a lot of work by which they can actually de-dollarize and increase the inflow of currencies within the local trade. Even which all countries that China had a communication with, they actually started sponsoring their local currency, because of which the internationalization of dollars actually reduced and even the Chinese currency was started using more. And also they actually started giving out funds within the Asian Infrastructure Development Bank. Thing is that they propagated the idea that the World Bank and the IMF are not giving money for this poor countries or the developing countries. They don't give you money for this infrastructure development. They only listen to the advice of the Western countries on USA, and if you follow the condition only, then only the IMF and World Bank actually gives you funding. Now that is actually true to an extent. So this BRI, China started giving out funding for the infrastructure development via this Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. So initially this was very attractive offer, because if you are actually developing the infrastructure, the economy will also boost within that country. So all this country fell under the trap of China through BRI. Now this also becomes a domestic malpractice, and it actually addressed the infrastructure gap. As I have told you, for the developing country, infrastructure was much more important, and these countries were actually IMF and World Bank was actually not giving the required infrastructure funding and such. So Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and China became the savior of the day. But we need to know what happened in the long run. There was a lot of trouble that was created. Initially, there was ecological damages happened. If you are looking, especially if you are taking a country like Laos, the thing is that there is actually Mekong River. There is actually Mekong River which floods during the rainy times and such. So what China did is that they actually constructed a dam over this Mekong River. It was in actually Laos. But the thing is that after the construction of the dam, the area became drier and it actually caused a lot of economical damage as such. Even when an economical damage was caused, proper compensation was actually not given to Laos as such. Also, there was an increase in the labor unrest, especially if you are looking Indonesia and Pakistan as such. Those local laborers were actually not given opportunities, and all the labors and all the things were actually imported from China to all these places, because of which there was actually a lot of labor unrest happening. Also, predatory economy. The thing is that even if you are developing, when they have good relations, what they do, the Chinese start dumping their goods in this economy and capture their market. Because of this, the entire market system of the country will be flooded with Chinese goods. So because of which it actually creates a dumping. And also, there is a huge debt burden which they have to pay. Especially if you are looking at the example of Laos, 65% of their GDP consists of the debt they have to actually pay back to China alone. So that is what some of the damages that actually have done. Also, unjust revenue sharing. If you are looking at the Gwadar port in Pakistan, 91% of the revenue generated goes to China, only 9% to Pakistan. So, because of which we can actually see a lot of reasons, economical angle and political angle, and China has been militarizing some of their also settlements also. So because of which we can say that all of this the BRI has been very damaging to the developing countries who are actually partnered with China. For alternative, there is actually a Build Back Better World initiative that is actually started by the G7. And recently in the G20, we knew about the India, Middle East, European Corridor, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. So all these can actually counter the BRI much more successfully. So that is what the small history and what is the BRI, what is the damage that the BRI has done, what are the way forward regarding that as well. So it has been a very lengthy session. I have covered a big amount of very important editorial and text articles. So next we will be meeting on next week Wednesday. I will be bringing about 5 to 6 days current affairs news together. So thank you and have a nice day. Hope you are happy. So please share and subscribe as well. Thank you.